We are live. I'd like to welcome everyone to another episode of Heart to Heart with Bree. Tonight we have Dr. Arlene Garrick, and she'll be talking about her newest book, The Smile That Carried My Silence. She was here a few months ago with her last book. It's The Lethal Truth, right? Was that your
Yes,
last book? Yes.
yes,
A
yes, it
book of
was.
poetry. And I tell you, brilliant book. You can find this on Amazon. So, Arlene, please introduce yourself to the viewers.
Thank you, Bree. Thanks for having me. My name is Arlene Garrick. Um, for those persons I went to high school with, they'll know me as Arlene Howell. And that's about it. I'm currently the director of hospitality, culinary, and lodge operations in Ohio, Nelsonville, at the Hocking College. And that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Well, I am so thankful that you agreed to come back. The minute I found out you had another book coming out, I reached out to you right away.
Yes, you
And
did. Thanks.
I'm just so thankful. So my first question is, why did you decide to express yourself through why do you decide to express yourself through poetry in your books?
So, poetry gave me a voice to speak my truth without asking permission. Some experiences are layered, some are painful, some have various nuances that at the time we cannot have a discussion about it. But poetry on the whole allowed me to do that. It allowed me to address contradictions, um, to look at strengths and vulnerability. Um, it gave me that outlet that I needed, that if I were to keep it in, it would have done more harm than good. So, poem became that voice that allowed me, it became that language of what I survived and also what I could not say out loud. That's when it helped me to express myself in a way that um, is meaningful, gets the message across, and at the same time maintain who I am.
I like how you put that, Arlene. How important is self-expression to you?
To me, it is very important because to be able to express yourself is a form of survival. When you're unable to express yourself, you internalize all that you're carrying. And when we internalize all of that, we are carrying a weight inside us that was never ever meant for us to carry inside. So expression is, it's not just communicating, it's not just talking, it's a release, it's identity. It's, for me, it's that reclamation of self, of who I am. It's a return to being me. That's, for me, that's what it's all about. Because if we keep things in, if we internalize things, then what is going to happen is that we are going to create irreparable damage to ourselves,
I agree.
you know?
I agree. And I'm hoping that the viewers out there, especially the women, I would say men too, because I think we
Yeah.
all need an outlet. We all need
Yes.
an outlet. And if you are not doing anything right now to express yourself creatively, I would advise you to, whether you journal, write poetry, write, if you like songs, write some lyrics, start, but find a way to get your feelings out. That's
Yes.
one of the things I would tell when I was doing personal training. And I would tell my clients, if you're having a bad day, write about it to get your feelings out. Because I think too many of us, I think we grew up holding things in,
Yes.
and it's toxic. It definitely is poison
Yes,
to the
yes,
body.
it is. I mean, I have seen so many and read about so many suicides and
Yeah.
depression and all of those things. And I'm thinking, if these individuals were guided to express themselves in a form where they could get some release, then
Yes,
probably they would still be with us here,
I
you know.
agree.
So
I definitely agree. I'd like you to talk about the power of the pen. I think a lot of people don't really understand how powerful a pen is. I remember my kids when they were younger, they would say, I'm bored, I'm bored. And I would tell
yes,
them, I said, you know what, when I was growing up, and if you had a pencil and a piece of paper, and like we would play connect the dots, we would play hangman, we would play all these things. It's like
yes.
there was never a moment to be bored. And it's like with the pen, when I pick up my pen to write in my journal, or if, as I've been writing books over the years. I'm just now at the stage where I'm ready to publish, but there's something powerful in the pen. I'd like you to address that, Arlene.
Okay. My mom she used to say to us, the pen is mightier than the sword. No, the
Yes.
pen by itself is quiet, but in the hands of someone who has something they want to share or they'd like to say, it becomes a disruptive tool. It documents what people experiences that people dismiss. It documents things that people decide not to give a name. They don't want to say anything about it. So, what the pen does, it allows us to give back dignity to experiences that were minimized, right? The pen in the right hand doesn't shout, but it endures. And
Yes.
sometimes endurance is the most powerful form of resistance, right?
Yes.
So, the power of the pen in the hand of somebody who has gone through experiences that nobody else has, or think that they're the only one who has had that experience, it provides dignity. It gives them a reason to reclaim who they are, to endure. So for me, that's the power of the pen.
I love how you put that. I'd like to welcome Andrew and Maxine, World Changer. Thank you both for tuning in. You know, as you were saying that, I was thinking about when I was younger, I used to write a lot of letters. And there was something beautiful about writing letters, receiving a letter, sending a letter. I think it was such a beautiful way to communicate. I mean,
Yes.
now now everything is email now, and it's like it's so impersonal. It's not the same. I miss writing letters and receiving letters. I mean, what's your opinion on that?
I agree with you. It's such a fun thing to write, to store all the memories, to store all the excitement of a day of your life and just put it down on paper and send it to somebody knowing that they are waiting anxiously and excitedly on the
Yes.
other end to read all that you've written. And of course, you're on pins and needles waiting for their response.
Yes.
you know,
Yes. The anticipation was
yes,
beautiful.
getting that envelope and just ripping it open and,
Yes.
you know, when I talk about this, they look at me as if, oh,
Like
go
you're
back to the
ancient,
dark,
right?
yes,
Like you're
go back to the dark
ancient.
ages.
They don't know
Yeah.
what they're missing. Olive, thank you so much. And I will be in touch with you to let you know when but it should, I'm hoping it'll be out sometime this week, but I'll let you know. But no, it's when I was moving from Jamaica to the United States, I had several friends that I was corresponding with, and I'll never forget, I wrote to all of them and I said, I'm moving to South Carolina, and I'm asking you to send your next letter to this new address. And I just want to move to South Carolina and have letters waiting for me. And I will
Yes.
never forget, I had about 10 letters there waiting for me when I got there.
Oh,
And it
the
was so
excitement.
exciting. Yes. Didn't know which one to open first. And I will
Yes.
never forget that memory. So the kids today, they don't know what they're missing, Arlene.
They don't know. I mean, I don't get letters. Well, the letters that come are bills. I'm not excited to
Right.
open those.
Right. I
But,
agree.
but I look forward to when I get a card and there's a
Yes.
little note in it. You know, the excitement is there. And of course, I can't wait to respond because they're anticipating a response.
Yes.
So
Yes.
emails don't really do it for me because
Same here.
to me it you don't have it doesn't give you the time, and it doesn't give you that personal connection that a letter that takes probably a week or 2 weeks in the mail,
Yes.
that anticipation of opening that letter, and sometimes a photograph pops out or something, or a memory it jogs. Those things, I will always treasure those
Oh
you
my
know
gosh, it's such a beautiful memory. A movie called, I think it's called 84 Charing Cross Road. It's a British movie with Anne Bancroft, I believe, and I forgot the actor that was in, Alan Jackson, I believe, but it's a movie about a correspondence between two people, a gentleman living in England and a lady living in the United States, and it's during World War II. And the letters are just so beautiful, and
Yes.
they develop this beautiful friendship through letters. And I just, I, there are some people would probably find that movie boring, but it's one of my favorite movies because I enjoyed the letters so much and the connection. And like you
Yes.
said, it's the waiting, the anticipation that was a part of the excitement. But I think emails, they're more, then it's so impersonal. It's just not the same.
No, I mean there's nothing for you to really anticipate because
It's
in a
true.
couple of seconds you're getting a response, and
Yes,
you read it as quickly and you respond. So that build up is not there.
it's true.
you know,
It's true.
it's really not there.
It's true. It's definitely the truth. I think so much has changed. Like when I was growing up, I've always loved reading. And it's just a part of my life. But there are a lot of kids who would rather not read today. And I think it's so sad because
Ex-
I just think back to the books I read as a child, and it developed that love for writing, because I
yes.
wanted to express myself through storytelling in my own way. And oh my gosh, the children today don't understand what they're missing.
No, we're in the age of technology where everything is shortened, everything is quick, everything
Yes.
is either a picture, an emoji, and sometimes I am hard pressed to figure out what is being communicated.
I get it.
you know,
I get it. I think, communication is just not the same anymore. And, you know, I know that people think that we tend to romanticize the past, but I can say that letter writing and how we used to value, writing and, reading, I wish that would be popular again. But for me, like I have the electronic version of books, but to me, there's nothing like
like,
holding a book.
yes,
I still like to get my books because there's that excitement to open the book and
yes,
to, it's just a beautiful
yes.
experience.
I totally agree. Flipping through the pages,
Yes,
going back and checking on something you read before, advancing to see, oh, let me see if what I think is what is going to happen.
yes,
And and then going back to where you're at, all excited to get to that point.
yes,
There's just something about that that holds a deep connect, especially for me. It's almost as if it's a part of growing with me through the different stages,
yes.
and I can always go back to that book.
Yeah.
you know my daughter said, Mom, you're a hoarder. You're finished with those books, why are you keeping them? I said,
I
well,
don't get rid of my books either. I don't blame you.
I said, because I go back and then Mom, you have read them so many times. What are you going back for? you know,
Oh my gosh, sometimes when you reread a book, it's like there's a little thing that you missed. Or to
yes.
just relive a certain moment. It's I'd like to welcome Fakita. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hi mommy, thank you for joining in. When I was a child, I remember reading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah.
I was about 8 or 9 years old. I think it's called Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory in the States. But I remember reading that book, and when Charlie found the golden ticket in his bar of chocolate, I remember cheering and being so excited for Charlie, and it was such a beautiful experience. And I tell you what, there were just, you know, nothing can replace that type of feeling that a book
Yes.
will give you. And I tell you what, like with my books, I believe in using a bookmark because some people
Yes.
will bend the page of a book to keep their place. Now that drives me nuts. I don't like that. I like my pages just to stay nice and straight. And I mean, I just love to hold the book. So, yeah, Kindles are great and everything. The electronic versions of books are nice, convenient, but nothing replaces
Yeah.
the book in
My
your hand.
books, I had colored stickies marking the page. So you would take up a book and there would be so many stickers, marking pages, little notes I'd put to myself. Because one of the things I dislike is marking in books.
I
I,
hate that.
I
I
don't
hate
like doing
that.
that.
I hate that. I hate that. Like I've seen people like they write in their Bibles. I just can't
No,
do it. I cannot write in my Bible. That would
no.
drive me out of my mind. I can't do
Sticky
it.
notes for me, and I put it, if there's a point that I want to examine further, I write
Yes.
it on a little sticky note and attach the sticky note to the book that I can go back and look at it, but I won't
I
write
I
inside the
I
book.
I I agree with you in that. Fakita's saying I feel like a crime is being committed when books are thrown away. Yes,
Yes.
I definitely agree with. I
Yeah.
I agree with you on that. The local college a couple years back, I remember they were giving away books that they were about to throw out, and my kids and I left with about 20 books. And I just thought it was a shame that they were throwing away those beautiful books.
Exactly. I love books. I have boxes and boxes of books. And my daughter is saying, "Mom, you need to take your books or else I'm gonna give them away." But you see, for them, they don't have the same love for books. Mm,
Right.
They grow up in a technological era where
Yes.
everything is on the internet. Instructions. I mean, I keep instructions for manuals for things that I have. She will look at me and shake her head and you're just a hoarder, mom.
You know, I think books are beautiful. And I tell you, I was telling someone the other day, I miss encyclopedias. I used to love going through the encyclopedias, and
Oh yes.
such a wonderful experience. I wish they would come back. And since
Yeah.
computers have become so popular, they don't do them anymore. But personally, I miss encyclopedias.
Oh yes. My mom used to have a set of the Encyclopedia Britannica, an entire
Yes.
set. She had the entire set of Anderson fairy tales.
Yeah.
Would read over and over again.
Over. Yes. Yes.
Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys, Bob's the Twins, I mean, Grace Livingston Hill. I mean, those were books of my era.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see them much anymore.
Yeah. I don't hear kids talking about those books anymore. But for us, they were such a important part of our childhood. And I tell you, my favorite class was English literature. And to this day, it's like I've been telling myself I need to reread Animal Farm. With
Yes.
all that's going on
Oh,
in the
yes.
world, I think it's time to reread that book. But it's like what I enjoyed about that class was learning to think, learning to appreciate different cultures and different ways of thinking, and
Yes.
embracing things that I never thought I could embrace. So yeah,
Yes.
I mean, wow, I'm telling you, oh, you have to come back when we can talk about our favorite books. I would love
Oh,
to do
yes.
that. I would
Yeah.
definitely love to do that. Now, I'd like to ask you, how therapeutic is writing for you?
Writing is deeply therapeutic for me because it allows me to process all the experiences that I have had. And during that processing, to remain calm and composed and to be professional at that time. It allows me to do that or to do the things that I can't do when it's real time. So on the page, here is where I don't really have to be strong. If I feel like
Yes.
crying, I can cry. I don't have to think about being upright and in my professional suit and
Yes.
smiling
Yes.
and being measured
Yes.
and conscious about how I respond to a question, how I address a snarky remark. I can be honest, right? Writing for me, it has become the place, as I said, where I get to just be me. If I don't feel like smiling at that time, I don't have to. I can really let out whatever is inside of me, whatever is I'm holding in that I shouldn't. Okay.
Yes.
So it tells me you don't have to smile. You don't have to allow your smile to carry your silence. You can finally exhale. You can finally let go and be who you are. You can be
Yes.
truthful and honest to yourself,
Definitely.
right?
All of us saying that books are enlightening, and if you don't love reading, you are missing everything that was forced to give up. And she said I was forced to give up some of mine. I don't know how you did that, Olive. I don't know how you did it. I tell you,
Yes.
I'm definitely holding on to mine. Now, as I was reading the title of your book, it's like it made me think of that inner silence that many of
Mm-hmm.
us carry around. How
Yes.
damaging is inner silence?
Inner silence can be very damaging. It becomes, as we keep things in, it becomes heavier and heavier, right? It impacts things like our self worth. We start questioning who we are. Do we
Yes.
have value? Um, we start convincing ourselves that whatever has happened, it's one off. It doesn't happen to anybody else, right? We even go to the point where we're really thinking, did it really happen? Was it
Yeah.
important? No. No, this book in particular, it helps me to let out what has lived inside me for far too long, right?
Yeah.
Those emotions that at the time I held in, I never got to let them out. And so in writing the book, and sometimes when I start writing, the emotions that were pent up, they just break loose. And
Yes.
that is during that time, the tears, the anger, the sorrow, right? All the emotions that you wanted to expel at that point in time. Once I start writing, I can tell you honestly, those emotions come rushing forward
Yes,
like a
they do.
tidal wave. Okay.
Yes.
So it has become that place where I really didn't have to smile. I really didn't have to be that perfect person. I really didn't have to be that person who gives advice, that person who smiles, that person who is polite and professional. You know, I could be that person who wanted to scream, here I am, I'm someone, right? I'm not deficient, right? The color of my skin doesn't determine who I am,
That's right.
right? I'm a mother, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend, and I have feelings like everyone else.
Yes.
So it allowed me to really release some of what was inside, right? And reclaim who I am. So when I do smile now, it's not because of the silence, right? But it's in spite of.
Yes. And when you were talking about the emotions, as I've been writing, I found myself doing a lot of crying. But it
Yes.
was like there was such a release And I felt like I had dropped a heavy weight that I'd been carrying for years. Like you said, all that frustration is out, and you could be honest, and
Yes.
it's like just when the words are coming out, and it's like you realize I was holding this in for
Yes.
so long. Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
oh my gosh.
The paper becomes that person or that experience or that memory or that incident that you can really let go. You can just purge yourself of
Yes.
what's in there. You put it down. And then for me, having gotten it out initially, I breathe a bit, I revisit it the next time, and then I start the clarification process.
Yes.
So it
Yes.
takes several reiterations to really get it to where I want it to go.
Well, I'm going to read preference or bias on page 20. I was really moved by it. So preference or bias, and this is you said a conversation with my
Conversation with it.
niece.
Yes, yes.
So my niece laughed and said she liked men with Asian flair, quiet strength, jet black hair. It's just a thing, she shrugged, like spiced broth or oolong tea. Her sister flared, voice edged, no, that's not taste. That is bias. Silence held a breath between them. Then she came to sit with me. Her hair scraped the tile, a small awkward protest. Her chair, I'm sorry, her chair scraped the tile, a strong awkward protest. I traced the rim of my cup with a fingertip, buying seconds before finding words. She stirred her tea and asked softly, is it wrong to want a type? Where's the line, she whispered, between thrill and exclusion? I did not answer right away. We sat there, me, her thoughts, the steam. I said, preference is like spice, bold, bright, it welcomes more. Bias builds a wall, a gate with no handle, a silence that decides before you even speak. Taste feels like rhythm. Bias closes the song. I swallowed the last of my tea, now lukewarm, its bitterness clinging to my tongue like a thought I had not dared to voice. I told her, you may enjoy one shade, but leave room for surprise. And still, I could see the gears turning. Was her desire a celebration or a quiet erasure? Had she made space or locked the door with a smile? She said nothing, just blinked. The tea went cold, but the question stayed warm. I just thought that was so deep. I thought that was so deep. And it says after this, oh, this is another one. This is something
No,
different.
this was just a reflect. I try to put reflections at the bottom
Okay,
of
well, let me read the
poems.
reflection. After the storm, there was breath, not the kind that hides, but the kind that dares. I no longer whispered to keep the peace. I chose volume, not because I had to, but because I finally could. The laughter in my chest pulsed like petals opening, daring me to claim my own volume. I just love that. I just love that.
Thanks, Bree.
So I have to ask you, when did you fall in love with poetry?
So I think I may have been in love with poetry for a long time, but the reality of what was important to me, I think, occurred in the early stages of when I was a young wife and mother, and trying to manage or struggling with what it meant to be both. Being faced with different issues and different challenges that occurred at that time. And so it forced me then to start putting into practice or putting into words the things that I like. It gave me that permission that I was talking about, the permission to write in fragments, in emotions, in memory, in experiences that occurred in and around me, right? It gave me the permission to be able to speak about things that impacted me personally, right? And to take me to places that I wanted to be, right? Not where others expected me to be.
Yes.
And I think that's when I realized that because it was an avenue, it was a gate, and that the only way to be able to help myself and possibly others was my willingness to open that gate, right? And to let out, in some cases, the things that I was holding in, and also to facilitate an entrance, right, to things that would help me grow and help me to be me.
I do enjoy your storytelling in your
Yeah.
poetry. What is
Yes.
what is your process?
I don't know that I have a process per se.
Okay.
As I said earlier on, it begins with a feeling. There's really no structure. I write from a moment, a look, a conversation, a silence, a dismissal, a realization. I'm going to the walking with my granddaughter to school, and we're crossing the park, and I see the geese, and immediately in my mind, just seeing them and how they're pecking through the grass, and seeing the geese, sort of surveying the
Yes.
environment. A poem started forming within my head, and I remember saying to my granddaughter, "What if we were geese? What do you think we would be outside there, pecking, in the grass and stuff like that?" I was in the aircraft, and at that moment, to take my mind offline, I decided to pen a letter to a friend in the aircraft, and that became a poem,
Oh wow.
right? And simple things like moving from Canada to the US, from the US back to Canada, and Canada back to the US in an environment that I never thought I would have been. Um, it became a poem. The different experiences that I've had, all of those things became material for me to utilize. Everywhere I go, I always have a notepad and a pen or pencil with me, whether it's traveling or at home on my nightstand. There is something, and I will be watching a movie, and I'm always arguing with the actors on the movie. I'm saying, why did you make that move? Why are you trusting him? He's not, So those things create the poems that I write, because some of them I identify with them, right? Some of them are real things that I write about, but I protect the identity of the innocent and the
Yes.
guilty, right? But these are the things that really provide me with the information I need in order to write those poems. As I said, most are experiences that are fractured experiences, things that have happened not only to me, but to others, things that forces silence. And so I decided that I was going to write poem. I was going to give voice to the voiceless, so to speak. You know.
I have to share with the viewers that one of the most beautiful gifts that I've ever received in my life was a poem from Arlene. When I did my first year celebration for my podcast, you sent me a poem.
I
And
did.
I was, yes, you did. Yes, you did.
I
And
believe that.
I was so moved by it. You see, you forgot, but no, I didn't forget that. I thought it was just so kind and so beautiful. And I just thought that was a very beautiful gift. I have to let you know that. So, listen, there are things in life that have meant a lot to me since childhood that I never forgot. And this was a few years back, but nah, when I got it, I remember because I always enjoy your poems on Facebook.
Yeah.
And you
Thanks.
made me feel so special. I mean, I'm like, Arlie took the time to write a poem for me for this celebration. I was really touched, and I can't thank you enough for that. Now
You're
I have
most welcome. I never, I don't even remember.
look back to look back to our conversations. You should see it. Is there anything off limits that you will not write about?
Mm, there is very little that's off limits. When
Okay.
I write, as I said, I'm being intentional. I use truth responsibly. As I explained before, I protect the identities. But what I do not do is to protect systems or behaviors that contribute to harm. You
Yes.
see, my writing is not about exposing individuals, it is about exposing experiences. It's about sharing in joy, sadness, sorrows, pains, right? It's saying, in this world, we all have similar experiences. We just deal with them differently. And wherever an individual is in this world, I want them to realize that somebody elsewhere understands, right? Somebody knows what they're going through. So,
That makes such a difference. That makes, I
yes,
think, such a difference. Now I have to, the title of your book, and I mentioned earlier, it made me think about smiles. And people
yes,
often assume that it's associated with joy, and
yes,
not
yes,
realizing that behind the smile sometimes you know there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of things going on inside that you're not telling anyone, but you're just
yes,
smiling. So
yes,
smiles can be deceptive. So I
very.
have to ask you, when you write your poetry, are you encouraging the reader to look deeper?
In a sense, I'm saying that we all through different things in life. So, yes, what I want them to do is to look deeper, to recognize in themselves, right, that things happen and they have an outlet. There's space between those lines. And I hope these individuals will be able to identify things that connect with them and know that they can address any challenges that they may have experienced. It's not saying that okay, you have to write if you have certain challenges, but all I'm saying is that, as you rightly said, a smile is a shield sometimes.
Yes,
A smile denotes happiness, composure, agreement. But many of those smiles are just shields, right?
it's true.
What I'm inviting readers to question what they see, not only in themselves, but also in others, right? What are they carrying behind that smile, right?
Yes,
What are some of the things they're holding in, right? How are they managing their silence? Do they think or believe that their silence can be managed?
yes,
So that's all. It's just looking, because you'd be surprised at some of the things that you find. I remember somebody saying to me, you're always smiling. I love that 100-watt smile that you carry around with you. He said, tell me your secret. And I remember jokingly saying, if I have to tell you my secret, I think I'll have to kill you after. So, you know, I, he laughed. But it would take a lifetime, several days, weeks, months, years, to really unpack, to unravel all the different elements of what was behind that smile, what it was hiding, you know, what silence was not being communicated, what, all of those things. So it's not easy, right? You smile because sometimes that's the easiest thing for you to
yes,
do. Right? It doesn't invite questions in most cases, so you don't have to worry about unpacking, explaining. You know, you sometimes just leave things where they are until the time is right for you to do so.
I tell you, after you know, reading, and your title, like I said, it grabbed me right away, and it did really have me thinking. And I'm like, how often do we see people, and we may say hello, whatever, and they're smiling, and their
Yes,
hearts are broken, they're dying inside. And we just saw the smile, so it didn't dawn on us to say, "How are you?"
yes,
Because maybe if we would take the time to ask, maybe that person is hoping that someone would say, "How are you?" Because
yes,
maybe they need a shoulder to cry on. And I'm just putting that
exactly.
out there for the viewers that I think we need to be more mindful sometimes of our interactions with others,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
sometimes I think we miss golden opportunities, to
yes.
be there for someone who really needed that shoulder to cry on.
Oh,
I love
yes,
your poetry because to me it challenges me to think and go deeper. Like the poem that I just read, I thought that
yes.
was really deep.
Yes, because you see, a lot of individuals, um, it's a line that is between preference and bias. It's a blurring of those lines. And so, without a in-depth understanding of themselves and whether or not it's a preference versus a bias, we continue to perpetuate the things that are not necessarily correct, but because it's based on our belief,
Yes.
right? We continue to do those things. My dissertation was looking at cross cultural differences in job interviews, focusing on the immigrant population. And what I found out was that a lot of individuals who said, "Oh, I'm not biased, I do bias training,"
Yeah.
but then their language gave you a complete different picture. So they're
Yes.
verbalizing that they aren't, but the language they use, the references they made, right, told me that they were not aware that yes, they are really perpetuating biases. It's not necessarily preferences. There's a big difference, you know.
Yeah,
So
that poem really got me thinking. And I'm hoping that, that's the kind of read I like because it challenges you to ask yourself those questions. Am I
yeah,
being biased?
yes.
So yeah, I mean, trust me, I really love how you address that. And I could actually picture myself there watching the conversation.
Oh
I
yes.
I really enjoyed reading that. Now, would you mind reading one of your poems, one of your favorites? Would you do that for us?
I have several, but the one I'm going to choose to read is for Jada. It's on page 56.
Well, listen, if you want to do a couple, I'm fine with that too. So page 56.
Yes, it's for Jada, my heartbeat in motion.
Okay, here, I got it.
In tiny arms and mighty chair, you whisper truths I long to hear. My Nana is one in a million, you would say, and all my doubts would fade away. Flying leaps into my arms, your trust dissolve all life's alarms. Your laughter lit every weary day, chasing the heavy thoughts away. At just 11, you somehow knew the perfect words to pull me through. With sass and sweetness, bold and wise, you saw the strength behind my eyes. Each note, each grin, each silly fight declared your love in morning light. You've got this, Nana, loud and true, a cheer so fierce it carried through. And now you beam, all proud and bold. Dr. Nana, your hands I hold. Jada love, you made me see the fearless light you found in me. My little sage with laughing, my little sage with laughing grace. You shaped my soul. You gave me space. I love you more. I win, you see, but let's just call it a loving spree. Because
Oh,
one, my granddaughter, my joy, my son, the race for love, it is never done.
oh,
We had this thing where, you know, when we're walking and she's at school and she said, I love you, Nana. I said, I love you more. And she said, I love you gazillion. And I said, I love you the whole world over. And we'll do that. When I was studying, she would be up with me. She doesn't know the material, but she will be questioning and she'll be asking and she'll be saying, you got this, Nana. You know.
oh,
So for me, what that poem did for me was that saying she really didn't have to rush, right? She didn't have to perform. She didn't have to carry that silence at all. I was telling her that I already carried it for her. She was
wow.
allowed to be who she is, without apology. You know,
That's a beautiful gift.
you
That
know.
is a beautiful gift.
And the other one that is more me is called, it's on 62,
Okay.
My Own Pace.
Okay.
They call life a race, but I walk it like a meadow path. I pause for wildflowers, I reroute when I must. Not every dream has a deadline, not every win wears a watch. I grow in spirals, not lines. I bloom slowly and full. Like the hibiscus on my sill, its bud tightening for days before the soft crack. Petals' edges trembling before they dare the air. Let them chase. I choose becoming. Because the journey is never just about the degree, the country, or the pain. It is about everything we live in between.
I just love that. I love that.
So,
I would just like to remind the viewers you can get your copy on Amazon, and it's definitely worth it. And her first your first what was it, Lethal Truth, that's another good one. I really enjoyed all the poems.
thanks, Brie.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Now I have to ask you, what is your goal for your poetry, and what is your hope for the reader as they read your poetry?
My goal is recognition in the sense that I want readers to see themselves in the spaces between the lines. I hope that they feel less inclined to hold things in, to bottle things alone, to feel alone, right? I hope they question their own silence. I hope they find a language for feelings that they could not previously disclose or previously talk about. Most of all, I hope they realize that strength does not always look and sound loud, right? Sometimes it looks like survival. Sometimes it is just being. Sometimes it's slowly becoming. You know,
Yes.
that's is what I want them to see. Because too often, I think we internalize what people think we should
True.
be, who they say we are, to the point that we start believing, you know, you should be the perfect wife, the polished and professional. You shouldn't laugh too loudly, should always be restrained. You cannot dance with your broom, you can't dance the rain, you can't sing off key because it's not allowed. Well, I'm here to change that narrative.
And that's refreshing. It really is. Really is. No, I'd like us to talk about the power of words. You know, we can use words to tear down, or we can
Yes.
be mindful. I mean, I'm hoping that, I think we need to be more mindful of the words that come out of our mouths, because
Exactly.
sometimes I think as we're speaking, we're not thinking of the damage that will be done. We can build up or we can tear down, but
Exactly.
some people don't seem to care if they're tearing down. And sometimes, in the previous episode I did, Maxine and I were talking about that. There's so much damage that's done to children from a young age because of labels. You're the ugly
Yes.
child. You're not the so intelligent child, or whatever.
Yes.
But the labels that were put on children, and they carried this burden through life. You know,
Yes.
people, oh, I didn't mean any harm. Why? I mean, maybe you didn't mean any harm, but you caused a lot of harm. You know,
Yes.
I think we need to
Yes.
be mindful of our words. So, what would you like to say about the power of words? I think words are so powerful.
They are. I remember growing up, there was this little gem that we used to say: sticks and stones may break our bones, but words cannot hurt us. And as I grew older, I realized that they may not break our bones, but they do create a lot of damage.
Yes.
They shape the environments that we're a part of. That says we're supposed to be polite, we are not supposed to talk about things that impact us. They can affirm dignity or they can erode our confidence.
Yes.
As you rightly said, there were some of us were put in categories. Um, you're not educationally inclined. You work better with your hands, so you're supposed to go to a technical
Yes.
school. You're supposed to be doing things with your hands. And then we start believing those things. Okay.
Yes.
Words can either welcome or exclude. You know,
Yes.
in my poetry, I want to acknowledge both the harm that words can cause as well as the healing that they can create, right? I use words to restore, to validate, right? To give voice to what has been minimized. I use words as tools for healing, right? Because words are very powerful.
Yes.
And if we reiterate something over and over and over again, it gets to the point where an individual starts believing those very words. So we have to be mindful of how we use our words and to think carefully before engaging our mouths, right? Because once those things come out, you can't take them back.
So true.
You can never ever take them back. And those are the most harmful ever.
Yeah. Yeah. And think about it. There are people who say the most horrible things, and they'll come back and tell you, I'm sorry, until the next outburst, right?
Yeah. Is it those words are actually reflecting what an individual actually feels and thinks?
Yes.
It's just that it came out sudden and in a rush and they were not able to pull it back. So that's when we come and we say, we're sorry.
Yeah.
But what you intended, you really said it. And it's reflecting exactly what you wanted to say or how you thought about an individual. It's not sporadic, it has been there all along.
I definitely agree. One of the things that I've had to learn is that in situations where I may feel angry, I've had to learn not to be reactive. There was a time that, especially if I was angry, I would say things that were not so kind and
Yes.
always regret it, but it's like you said, you can't take those words back.
No, you
And the
can't.
damage is done. And I know, like what you mentioned, that sticks and stones will break my bones. Sometimes words break hearts,
Oh, yes, they do.
kind words can definitely break your heart and do a lot of damage. And you
Yes.
know, I love words. I've always had a love for words. My favorite game is Scrabble. I love words. I just love
Yes.
words. And, my goal is to use words that are more positive and uplifting. I'm
Yes.
being very intentional There are things that still make me angry, but I have learned that I don't have to articulate every thought in my head, and
Yes, yes,
sometimes take that time to process, because like they say, cool heads will prevail. And I
yes,
think it is better to take the time to calm down, because relationships are often damaged because
yes,
of, misunderstandings, or like sometimes I think the words are meant when they're being said, and they may feel good at the time coming out of the mouth, but then later on, I don't think it feels so great, you
yes.
know?
Which is why one of the things I do when I get upset, I start writing. And
Yes.
when I start writing, I always have little questions um, for myself, mainly for reflection. Um, did this require a reaction? How did it feel that I was not able to respond, or I didn't respond at that time? Right? Did it take anything from me? Did it detract from who I am? Right? What would it have been like if I was able to respond, or if I'd followed that deep desire just to let go and just leash the wrath of Arlene on whosoever it is that crossed my
Yes.
path at the time? And I find as the more I write, the calmer I got, right?
Yes.
And I was able to start looking at things, right, in a more strategic way. And then I realized that that is one of the best mechanism I've ever been able to use, especially in a position where you're a leader and you are challenged. And I can tell the amount of challenges that I experience
Yeah.
on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes I pause and I question myself, at this stage of your life and game, what on God's earth possess you to undertake a challenge such as this? Right? It is cause for us to pause and reflect and
Yeah.
to look at what what does this mean? How can you help? How can you improve? How can you be better? How can you erase what
Yes.
stigma has all perpetuated for such a long time? And that continues.
Yeah. I tell you, it makes a difference to take the time to write. Oliver saying, Bree, that one thing I could not deal with in my marriage, and I don't want to hear I am sorry. It doesn't count for me. I get it. That's why I'm not married
Yeah,
anymore. Because trust
yeah,
me, I went through enough of that. And I tell you, one of the things I had to learn on my job, because I work in logistics. So I work with a lot of truck drivers. And when I worked on site, there are some guys who can be disrespectful sometimes. And
yeah,
I had to learn, and it took me years to get to the point where, you know what, you don't have to answer every negative thought. And I remember a driver came in one day, and he was very disrespectful in my opinion. And I remember I didn't care who was there, but I remember saying, who the hell do you think you're talking to? You know? And it just got very ugly. And after that incident, I made a promise to myself that, you know what he said was disrespectful, but then you took it there too, because you
yes.
reacted. So even though I felt that he was wrong for how he approached me, I was wrong and I was unprofessional in my manner, and I just I had to learn. I had to learn, and it took a long time.
But you're human. You're
Yes.
human. I mean, I am in an environment where I'm the only black, I'm the black director
Yeah.
supervising white colleagues. And I remember, there's one that pushes my button, pushes it to the point that I have to take a deep breath. And one day I said, have you ev- have you ever experienced a hurricane? And he says, no, why? And I said, you don't want to. And I just walked away. And he said to the young lady, um, what got her panties in a bunch now?
Ooh.
you know. And I just held my head and kept walking,
That's the best way to do it.
you know, because you, whether we want to admit it or not, we are black people in a white world that still perceives that we are less than. And in organizations, you're going to find yourself being faced in situations where, quote unquote, they want to put us in our places.
I remember being told that one day, with my with a company I worked with before, and I remember being told you need to be put in your place. And I
Yeah.
tell you, thank God for therapy and all of that, because there was a time where that would have been a very ugly situation. But it's like,
Yes,
being mindful, because it is challenging, but I think that when we react, you know, we end up in many cases looking just as bad as the person that started the
exactly.
whole situation.
Yes. I've learned that we go high when they go low and
Yes.
just keep things moving.
Yes. No, I definitely agree with you on that one. And I tell you, I would love for you to come back so we can talk about books. Like maybe you would
Oh,
like to
yes.
talk about your top 10 favorite books. I'll have my
Oh,
list,
yeah,
you have yours. And
definitely.
maybe we have some books in common that we like. So I would love for you to come back so we can talk about that if
Any,
you would.
anytime, anytime.
Okay,
It would be my pleasure.
wonderful. Wonderful. I enjoyed this conversation so much, and I always enjoy reading your poetry. Do
Thank
you
you.
have any closing thoughts that you would like to share with the viewers?
Well, the smile that carried my silence, it's not just about pain. It's about resilience. It's about that quiet strength that we have inside of us that we are not aware of. It doesn't require us to be anybody apart from who we are. One of the things it does, it requires us to function, to carry on our day-to-day activities, all right, while we are carrying this invisible weight.
Yes.
Right? It is about truth that lives beneath that composure, that veneer that we have, that we're walking around with every day, smiling. You're walking around with a smile, and you realize that people see you as happy-go-lucky. But what I'm saying, be more observant. Okay,
Yes.
be more empathetic, right? Be more willing to listen beyond just the surface, right? Beyond just what is spoken. Once we're able to do that, it means that the silence has finally done something powerful. It allows individuals to be heard, right? What is not said. Because as you rightly say, people walk around smiling and we don't know the weight that they are carrying. You
Yes.
know, you don't know what has been their day, you don't know the pain, you don't know what they're struggling with, but we're all actors. Believe it or not, we're all
It's
actors.
true.
Some of us would win Grammys and
It's
Oscars,
true.
and
It's true.
no,
It's true.
because we're acting, right, for what is seen on the outside, while on the inside, we're slowly dying because the expectation and the culture, how we were taught, the culture that we have adopted, the environment within which we are dictates that you behave a particular way, you look a particular way, right?
Yes.
You react a particular way. And so we all go on stage in our
Yeah,
day to day lives.
it's true. That is so true. Well said. Well said. Well, I tell you, I enjoyed this conversation. I am looking forward to our next one. In fact, I will be sending you a message to find out your availability so we can talk about books. And I'm
Yes.
excited about that.
So am I. It's really refreshing. It's refreshing to have conversation with somebody else who sees and enjoys some of the things that I do. I thought books were a lost cause, right?
No, I tell you what, I thank God for my parents because my dad loved to read, my mom too. And, I was one of those kids that when the book fair was coming to school, that was always such a big deal. My mom would always make sure we had the money to buy a new book. And I tell you what, I will never forget when my mother told me the last book fair I attended in England, she said, um, I'll give you enough money to buy 2 books. Oh my gosh, it was like an early Christmas, and I can
Yeah.
still remember the books that I got. That's just how important books have been to me. The before we left England, the last book that my mom bought me, and it was a Christmas present, was Treasure Island.
Yes.
And I loved that book so much. And every night before going to bed, I would read a chapter for my brother and my sisters. And I remember my brother would always ask me to read another chapter. And we ended up leaving England before I finished the book. And when we were doing it was a last minute move. So I didn't take the book with me. And to this day, I cannot bring myself to finish reading Treasure Island because it's just a sad memory. But I just remember the joy of receiving that book and reading it with my siblings. And my siblings, they all have that love for reading too. I think that as parents and grandparents, we have a duty to instill that interest in our children and grandchildren.
Yes, yes, we do. But I tell you, it's a upward hill climb with technology.
Yeah, it's true.
Yes, it's a challenge.
It's true. So I'm looking forward for us to continue our conversation. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you too. It's my pleasure, Bree.
Thank
Always.
God bless everyone. I'm wishing you a wonderful week. Don't forget to order your copy of Arlene's book. Take care. God bless.
Okay. God bless you too. Thank you.